I was 8 when I left, fled across the Gulf of Finland to Finland in February of '44, and in September of '44 we ended up in Sweden, where we stayed until '48, and we came to Canada. I don't know what an 8-year-old would feel. I suppose a child accepts more or less what the situation is.
The loss of Estonia was something that's colored my whole life. People here say, when they ask about occupations and wars and things like that, I said yes. Kids get used to things.
When the Russians invaded Estonia in 1939, anybody who maybe only possessed a house or even a horse was considered a capitalist. We didn't want to end up to die in Siberia. We had to flee from the approaching Russian army, and that is when our real refugee life started.
It was either in 1939 you go to Siberia or you come to Germany.
We had to hide because we were marked for deportation. My father and my brother was in the German army. They gave us passage by train. That journey, that was pretty terrible. Russians were shooting and dropping bombs, and I remember we used to jump out from the train when there was the sirens.
Train stopped and all the passengers had to go and lie into ditches. I never forget the sound of listening to the planes coming.
My aunt came by and said that she was leaving for Germany that very day because there were ships in the harbor. Just like that, my mother said, "We go."
My father says something important is going to happen. We have to leave. But you may not speak to anybody about this. Loaded the boat. There were so many people. There were just, as we were heading out, and I said, there are too many people here. I think we're all going to sink. My father said, you know what? We all have to leave. If we sink, we all sink.
We met up with my aunt, who was in tears because she had hoped to get on that lovely big ship, which had a red cross on it, and hoped that even the Soviets would not bombard a Red Cross ship. We weren't important enough, so we couldn't get on that ship. But another one by the name of Lapland came by. We got on that ship. My aunt said, look, these are Russian planes coming. There was an enormous jolt. The ship practically went on its side. The torpedo for our ship missed us because our ship managed to make that sudden jolt out of the way, but it went right into the hospital ship. In 4 minutes, it sank. That was the ship that we had so badly wanted to get on. To this day, it reminds me of the old Jewish proverb which says, Lord, listen to us. Do not pay attention to our prayers. If our prayers had been met, we would have been in Moiro and I wouldn't be anymore.
For 2 weeks, we were on the road being shot at, sleeping in barns or wherever, and other refugees sleeping, and Many times in the morning it was cold, we woke up and I remember saying, "Oh mother, look at the other children, they're still sleeping." Mother says, "Yeah, but they were frozen actually."
And all of a sudden we are told, okay, the war is over, and now next morning we'll have a car here and we'll return you to the Russian side and then you can go home. And there wasn't anybody who could explain that that's the last thing we want to do, you know.
People were very happy, except for my mother. My mother kept saying, "Why are you happy? Our country is under the Soviets. There is nothing to be happy about." But people around somehow were glad enough to be saved themselves. I mean, a natural human feeling. The anxiety came a couple of months after the war.
My grandmother carrying on about, we've got to leave Sweden, it's not safe, we have a daughter who lives in Canada, you know, we should go to Canada. The work that was available was, for instance, in forestry and a lot of things like that. So we ended up in Alberta. My father, you know, who'd been a university professor, and people who were lawyers and accountants, and it was like the best educated harvesting crew perhaps in all of Canada. It was a different kind of life for all of us. As a child, of course, you sort of accept what there is.
The first impression I had of Canada after a very slow trip across Atlantic, what struck me was how friendly and relaxed Canadians were. I wasn't so used to that.
And then we arrived in Vancouver, and then train from Vancouver to Toronto. And that was, I would say, when my happiest life began.
I am very touched when I think back, you know, how well I was received by Canadians. I would consider myself a Canadian first, and then maybe after a while one of Baltic German heritage.
I think the refugee experience did that. I sort of lost my identity as an Estonian. I sort of lost my identity in connection with really any other country either. I'm like in a way an outsider.
I think the children and the grandchildren who were born here in Canada should get an idea of what the previous generations went through during the Second World War, really, and perhaps they will have a better understanding of what it actually is like to live in a non-peaceful country.